Immediately, I needed to figure out why this player was disappointed in the ending.
Players had reasons to have their decisions heard.
There were smiles, some tears, and it all ended with a round of applause. I'm not saying it never happens, I'm just saying it doesn't happen very often. It's nearly impossible in some cases. Since D&D campaigns can last years, even decades, it's extremely likely that at some point, life is going to get in the way or people are going to get burnt out and disinterested. The players either won't really want to come to the next session, or they won't be able to. Sticking the landing on the end of a D&D campaign is almost impossible. I think I might have managed it, but I will let you be the judge. The first problem I had was that everyone, including me, wanted to just keep playing. We didn't want to end the campaign. I found myself writing in more final battles than just one. No, this is the final battle. Okay, no, this one's the actual final battle. All right, this one has to be the last one. There were 2 final battles that actually wrapped up storylines nicely. Defeating Vecna lasted an entire session and wrapped up almost all of the storylines, but we didn't want to leave anything hanging. So we played on. After defeating the Hag Coven, almost all of the loose ends, but one, was wrapped up pretty well. But we wanted a real completion to the story, so we played on. It was at this point that I realized that actually ending the campaign when people wanted to play was the way to do it. I mean, what are the alternatives? You either end the campaign when people still want to play, or people get burnt out and you don't really have a good ending to the campaign. Or people can't play because life gets in the way, and there's still not a good ending. I did not want to have to time having a satisfactory ending with when people can't play anymore. When I realized this, I immediately started writing the final session, the epilogue. The second problem I had was that loose thread at the end of the hag fight, an unresolved, overarching story that the players wanted to finish up. Worst of all, it started a heated disagreement at the table. Defeating the Hag Coven and their associated minions and other people that showed up was supposed to be the final session, and we would figure out how to handle the epilogue once that was done. At the end of that fight, I finally asked how people felt about the entire session and whether they were comfortable ending it here. I knew we all wanted to play, but I needed to make sure everyone was okay with ending the campaign when we still wanted to play. And the first comment was, disappointed. Immediately, I needed to figure out why this player was disappointed in the ending. Not get upset about it. I needed to figure out what the problem was and fix it as soon as I could. The player, thankfully, was very clear with their reasoning for why they were disappointed, which helped immensely. 3 years ago, when we started the campaign, the inciting incident for the main plot was the sorcerer's hometown getting wiped out and his parents getting abducted. This was the glue that stuck the party together for most of the campaign, and during the hag fight, they finally found the sorcerer's parents, but they were imprisoned in a painting. They had the parents in the painting, but the parents still hadn't been released, and the story felt unresolved, especially since that was one of the larger main plots of the whole overarching campaign. The interesting thing is, it was the fighters player that spoke up about this, not the sorcerers. On the bright side, it's fantastic that the players were getting invested in each other's stories, not just their own. And that is the hallmark of the best campaigns that I've ever had the honor of running. But there was still the issue of freeing the sorcerer's parents and resolving that storyline. Another player at the table, my partner, was playing guest characters on and off towards the end of the campaign. The hag fight was mostly for this guest character's story, who had been with the party for 6 or 7 sessions. My partner is a writer, and she is a fan of unfinished stories. Leaving people wondering keeps them thinking about the story even after it's finished. And thus, the disagreement started. The fighter wanted to finish up the main story thread, and the guest wizard character was totally fine with leaving a story unfinished. Both players had reasons to have their decisions heard. The fighter had been with the party since the very beginning of the campaign, and the wizard has a degree in creative writing and is a published author. But it actually doesn't matter who has a stronger claim to hear their voice heard. As a DM, it's my job to think of a compromise that everyone will enjoy. The other two players didn't offer any opinions throughout this entire discussion, disagreement, fight, whatever you want to call it. They like to avoid confrontation, and understandably so. I said I needed some time to figure it out, whether we were going to do a 3 or 4 session mini arc to wrap everything up, or whether we were just going to do an epilogue and call it good. Either way, the decision was not going to be made that night. I promised I would reach out to each player individually to discuss how they felt about the end of this campaign. People went home. Some upset, some just quiet. Fortunately, we had already planned to take the next week off of playing D&D, so I had some time. For the first week, I didn't reach out at all. I let everyone cool off with plenty of time to spare. In the week before the final session, I did indeed reach out to each player individually, whether over text, over a phone call, or in person. I talked at length with every single one of the players I was at that table, including the guest wizard. I asked them how they wanted to wrap up the campaign, how they felt about their character ending here, and I asked what unfinished business they wanted to take care of before calling it the end of the story. I put together the best session I could and prayed that it would go well. The plan was to do a single epilogue session with lots of scenes, summaries, time skips, wrapping up every single story thread, and planting hooks for the upcoming campaign, which all 4 players, including the guest, would be a permanent member of. The guest would not be a part of this epilogue session because she kind of already had her wrap-up. In the final hag battle, she teleported away to a plot hook for the next campaign. I planned out the scenes as well as I could, and did my best to keep it an even number between all 3 of the remaining players. I also put in as many callbacks to the campaign as possible, including something from the Fighters Session 0. We finished up the session, and the consensus was, it was amazing. It went so well. The guest only came back for a single sending spell and wasn't seen for the rest of the session. Because of the conversations we had, everyone got to wrap up all the storylines they wanted to, and the ones that didn't get wrapped up could be turned into plot hooks for the next campaign. I even threw in a scene with one of the player characters who had died earlier in the campaign. In this scene, a weakened and defeated Vecna was asked to pay a debt, and he plucked out his other eye and gave it to one of the villains of the upcoming game. The final scene was, of course, the sorcerer breaking his parents out of their imprisonment in the painting, which I let the sorcerer's player describe. The session was amazing. There were smiles, some tears, and it all ended with a round of applause. Everyone was satisfied with the end of Arcane Anxiety. Even the guest wizard, whose character is probably going to come back in the next campaign as an NPC. If you've ended a long-term campaign before, please let me know how it went in the comments. This is the first campaign that I've ended on terms that I think are good. I hope this story helps you resolve similar situations that arise at your game table, and to help end your campaigns on good and complete notes. And now you know that these are not empty words when I say everything is going to be okay.